Hey everybody, in this video we thought we would share our reflections on our time in Montevideo, Uruguay.
We didn't see as much as we had liked, but we enjoyed what we did see.
Hey everybody, I'm Sean.
And I'm Deb.
And welcome back to the channel. So we thought we'd take a little bit of time today. We are here in Asunción, Paraguay, and we're kind of thinking back on our time previously in Montevideo, Uruguay, where we just came from. So we thought we would do one of our kind of reflections video, kind of share a little bit of our thoughts and insights on Montevideo.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about was the weather. And we were there in the summertime, and it was mostly probably mid-80s or so.
Yeah. I mean, it was pleasant.
It was pleasant. And even in the wintertime, when you know, their summer is opposite from the U.S., so it's their summer's over December, January, February, and it was mid-80s. And then even if you were here in their winter, so if you came in July, their wintertime, you're going to be right at about 60 degrees for the high. So
it's pleasant.
It is very pleasant year round. So, I mean, definitely if you're looking for a long-term stay with good weather, it's probably a good choice.
It's right on the ocean. So you get those nice ocean breezes if you're close to the ocean. So,
and if you don't want the warmer weather and you're just coming for a short time, just avoid their summer.
Yeah. Because
if you come a couple months before, a couple months after, it'd probably be perfect.
Yeah. There were some days that we got 90-degree days. It was a little on the hot side.
Yep. And so the other thing that the next thing we would probably talk about is activities.
Right.
So we had just come from BA where there was just so much stuff to do. In Montevideo, there might not quite be as much stuff to do, but there's still quite a bit of things you can do.
Different stuff to do, yeah.
Now, if you've seen any of our other videos in Montevideo, you'll know that we missed some of the things you could do that we wanted to do, but we just couldn't. But
we just didn't have the time to do it.
We didn't have the time. Right. So, obviously, a lot of people go to Montevideo for the beaches, and we happen to be staying in Pocitos.
Yep, which was absolutely a beautiful beach. It was gorgeous.
It was said to be the nicest beach in Montevideo. Now, if you're going for the Caribbean blue waters, you are not going to find that. It's probably more of a browner water. But if you're just a beach bum and you want to hang out on the beach was super nice, I thought.
It was. So Montevideo is it's on the edge of a bay that it kind of shares across the bay is Buenos Aires, and that bay is fed by the Rio de Plata River, and there's a lot of just sediment that comes down that Rio de Plata River. So the water's just more brown. It's not that beautiful Caribbean blue, but the beaches in Pocitos were very nice. They were very well cared for. So it was a nice spot.
They were out cleaning them every day.
Yep.
So we had planned on doing, and we never got to a wine tour. It's also a very popular thing you can do there, and you can either just go do a wine tour. I had originally signed us up for a wine and lunch, which we had to cancel.
Yeah, and there are some nice Uruguayan vineyards that you can go to.
There's some museums you can visit. There's museums about soccer, if you'd like to go see soccer stuff.
And the stadium, the soccer stadium, like we learned on the hop on, hop off bus, like FIFA declared that it was like one of the best soccer stadiums because it was declared for soccer.
And one of the soccer stadiums in Montevideo was where the first World Cup, I think, from 1939, I believe it was. So obviously they have
They're
soccer.
Serious about their soccer
history
in Montevideo. Yep.
There's also, if you've ever seen, there's been a couple movies about the. I think they were soccer players, actually.
They were.
Back in like 1972, they crashed in the Andes. And the latest movie is really good if you've never seen it, Society of the Snow.
And Alive was the previous one.
Yeah, and they have a museum there about it. So anyway, it's probably a very good museum. We did not make it to that. No.
Yeah. But we saw the British Hospital.
We did see the British Hospital for way too long.
Right.
So we did do, towards the end of our stay, you can do a hop on, hop off bus. Now, I actually found in BA there was probably more stops that had more stuff to do.
Yeah.
But if you're short on time, if you're just jumping off a cruise and you didn't sign up for anything, it actually is a really good way to get around Montevideo and just see
I thought it was a good cultural and historic tour. So if you're interested in learning more about Montevideo and just kind of going on a nice tour, it's a good bus tour.
I just found it fascinating watching some of the architecture on the buildings was pretty cool. And you can do both the inland central
inland.
tour, or you can do the Rambla. So you can do both or either.
The Rambla is all along the beach.
It's all along the beach.
Yep. And speaking of Rambla, I definitely think that's an activity that people should absolutely do. If you've got time, just the Rambla is this beautiful, long, concrete walkway that's well maintained. That goes like, how long is it? It's
almost 14 miles.
14 miles, yeah. Just walking along the Rambla is a great experience.
You can walk, you can rent bikes. There's people out there rollerblading with their dogs.
Lots of dogs.
Yep, lots of dogs. Okay, so Old Town is definitely not to be missed.
Yeah, I agree.
If you are coming in on a cruise, you're probably coming in to the port anyway, and so it lands right at Old Town, and it's just kind of fun just to get out and walk around there. There's lots of like vendors with all their stuff along the sidewalk and
little cafes to duck into and get coffee and alfajores. If you've never had an alfajores, you need to come to either Buenos Aires or Montevideo, and
they like their alfajores.
It's a cookie. It's really good. Yeah.
So then there's some day trips too that you can take from Montevideo, and some of these we have planned on.
Maybe we'll do them next time. Yeah.
So one of the day trips is we have planned on taking a bus to Punta del Este. I believe from Montevideo it's about a 2-hour drive. But anyway, it's very much a kind of maybe a higher class beach town.
That's your beach town. Yeah.
And we didn't make it on this trip. The other thing you can go do as a day trip is Sacramento. Okay, let me make sure I get this. Is Colonial del Sacramento.
Okay.
You can also take a bus out there, or if you're coming from BA, you can either take the ferry directly to Montevideo, or you can take the ferry to Colonial del Sacramento and then just catch a bus to Montevideo.
Yeah,
so if you wanted to stop and see it along the way while you're traveling.
And that's another thing. Like if you were here, if you came to Montevideo for 3 or 4 days and you wanted to go across the bay and experience Buenos Aires, the Buki bus is a really nice ferry and it's fast. So it'll get you across the bay. I mean, fast, but it takes about 90 minutes?
I was going to say maybe a couple hours.
2 hours maybe. So fast isn't like a 15-minute ferry ride. So plan for it. But it's a very fast ferry and it'll get you all the way across the bay in like a couple hours. And then you could spend a day in Buenos Aires. So definitely worth checking out. So for one of the things that we always look at is we love to walk. So, basically look at how walkable is the city. And what did you think about Montevideo from a walkability perspective?
So I found it very walkable, actually. It's not as flat as Buenos Aires was.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a little more hilly, but nothing that's going to wear you out or out of the ordinary or anything.
I would say that just one thing to be aware of. I thought the sidewalks were kind of similar to Buenos Aires and that they have these, tiles that are all along the sidewalks and just you got to watch where you're walking because just depending on where you're at, you might be in a really nice neighborhood, but some of the tiles might be broken apart. And so you don't want to catch a foot and trip and fall. It's just it's like everywhere. Watch where you're walking. But I thought it was a very walkable city.
But for us, being in Pocitos, we could walk to the grocery store, coffee shops, which we didn't make it out to too many.
Shopping malls.
Yeah, shopping malls.
The beach was 3 blocks from us.
And if
really
you wanted a good walk without... the nice thing about walking in Pocitos as opposed to on the Rambla was the trees and so the shade. Because we found that sometimes if it got too hot in the Rambla, we just go in a block or two. But the Rambla, obviously, it's really nice. And if you just wanted flat and to be able to good sidewalk, then the Rambla is a good option
There's lots of gelato places to walk to get ice cream. So
for transportation, so obviously we use walking a lot for our transportation. It is our preferred method. If we can, pick a grocery store that we can walk to, we prefer that.
But we had to use cabs.
We did use cabs or Uber due to some sickness issues.
Yeah, so obviously I think if you watched our previous video, like we caught a cab at, I don't know, what was it, like 2 a.m., something like that? 4 a.m., right, to go to the emergency room. And we didn't have any problem finding a cab. We had no problems getting Uber drivers. All of our Uber drivers were outstanding. Some of them spoke English. And I found
it was inexpensive,
It was inexpensive, yeah. Some spoke English, some didn't. They were all very respectful and all very nice. And then they all got us exactly where we needed to go. So, yeah.
And then there's buses for public transportation, too. We didn't get on any of those, but they do have a bus system. And they were going up and down, the streets by us.
We saw them because like when we went on the hop on, hop off bus, a lot of the city buses came to the same bus stops.
That's
and,
true.
it was very easy to kind of see what the paths were and what lines they were. So,
but easy to get around.
Cruise ships come in there. So from a transportation perspective, and the Buki bus, as we mentioned, goes across to Montevideo. So.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about food. We did not maybe sample as much food in Montevideo as we normally would. We'd probably get out a little bit more.
We didn't have as many sweets.
We definitely didn't have as many sweets.
No.
But we did sample some food.
Yeah.
We found some pizza that we liked. Unfortunately, there was a long period where I had to eat very bland food.
Yeah.
So we were cooking at home a lot.
Right. We did.
But
it was
still
nice.
sampled some.
So we could go to the grocery store was very close. There was a smaller grocery store and a larger grocery store. So, the nice thing was we had access to a lot of good fruits and vegetables. We could get those kind of pre-cooked chickens that, people think of getting from Costco. They had really nice pre-cooked chickens that we could use. So we had, we ate in a lot more than we usually would, but I thought we had access to a lot of good food. When we did eat out, it was generally something that she needed to have that was soft on her stomach. So pizza was usually the order, right?
Oddly enough, pizza, probably because
pizza
of the
worked
bread.
Well. Yeah, it's really bready. Yeah. Yep.
So a little bit about the cost. So I did find that our apartment was a little expensive in Montevideo, and I had planned on paying a little bit more in Montevideo, just because I kind of knew and had heard maybe it was a little bit more expensive. But honestly, the apartment was a couple blocks from the beach.
Yeah,
that's probably why it was a little bit more expensive.
It was prime location.
I feel like
really was.
If I were to do it all over again, I'd probably go inland a little bit more, and maybe a little bit where we were in Pocitos, and then we were probably like a 25 minute ride from Old Town. I probably would have gone in between, honestly.
Yeah. We're not big beach people, so being right on the beach I'm sure you asked me, do you care if we're on the beach? And I was like, yeah, we should be on the beach. And I think maybe what I realized is I don't really care that much if we're on the beach, unless we're going to go down there and spend a ton of time down there.
It doesn't really matter.
I think we'd rather go inland, find coffee shops and museums and walk at parks and things like that. So I agree with you. It probably would have been better to have been closer to, I'm sure I drove that decision to the beach. But.
And so I had already thought, okay, when we're in Montevideo, we are probably going to have to cook more meals at home because of the cost. Although honestly, I did not find the food cost in Montevideo to be more than BA, I don't think, Buenos Aires. Because Buenos Aires, the prices have been going up.
Yes.
And so I really didn't find a lot of difference in the prices.
A lot of the people in Buenos Aires were complaining about inflation at this when we were there, and inflation of food prices and restaurant prices. So I agree. I think the food cost was pretty comparable in Montevideo to Buenos Aires. Montevideo is much more of what I would consider to be like a commercial city, like lots of bank buildings and technology buildings. Buenos Aires certainly has that too.
But Buenos Aires has a little bit more of the kind of, I don't know what you call that, the old world charm.
It's more of a cultural city is what I would say. Lots more museums and things like that. But BA certainly has its financial and technology centers. But I feel like more of Montevideo was focused around finance and technology.
And Buenos Aires didn't have the beaches, but it did have really fabulous parks. That Tres de Febrero park was amazing.
Yeah. Yep. So, I think from a cost perspective, I feel like they were pretty comparable.
Pretty comparable, yeah.
Okay, so we always like to talk about safety because that's a question that we get a ton. Is this city safe? And when we look at Montevideo, there was never a time when we were walking around, especially in the Pocitos area. And then I had to walk, from our apartment all the way up to the British Hospital and the Tres Cruces Mall area. Never, ever did I feel that I wasn't unsafe. Now, again, we take all of our precautions. We don't walk. We don't walk late at night. We don't go to bars and get drunk and then walk home from that. So we're very careful about it. So we have less risk than I think some people do. But
and I feel like when we were in Montevideo, we were stayed in the apartment a lot more than we would normally because of sickness.
Yeah.
But so we weren't out and about as much, but I never ever felt unsafe in
I never felt
Montevideo.
like, you know, sometimes you go for cab rides in cities and you feel like you might get scammed or whatever. Never felt that with the cabs in Montevideo. In fact, one little tip, you can, in the Uber app, actually order a cab. And of course, just like Uber, it's going to show you how much it's going to cost and it's going to charge your credit card. And so you don't have to worry about negotiating a price with the cab driver. It's almost exactly like as if you had paid for an Uber driver. So kind of cool. Yeah. Yep. So a safety perspective.
Yeah.
I thought it was great.
Perfectly safe. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Nomading.
Nomading. Yeah. We always do like to talk about, is it good to digital nomad in that specific city? So what do you think? Would you nomad in Montevideo?
Honestly, it's probably a little bit pricier than what I would like for nomading. I think if I looked at a different location than Pocitos, something a little bit cheaper, maybe that might influence me. I don't know. What do you think?
So for me, it's generally always about technology. Do I have access to the internet? That's always important. And then, you know, I always like can I go to a coffee shop and are there good restaurants around? And I had outstanding access to the internet all through our trip.
That was very good.
Never had a single disruption, never had a problem. I had all my meetings with clients, so no problems at all with technology. We had plenty of access to restaurants and cafes and gelato places and things to do. So I think it is great from a digital nomad perspective. Tons of things to do and tons of infrastructure. If you're looking for a place to go live for a month or 2 months, Montevideo is a good one. Yep. So I think that's about it. That's kind of all the topics we wanted to cover in our little reflections on Montevideo, Uruguay. As always, if you've got questions about Montevideo, if you've got thoughts about it, if you've got places that you loved and you want to share them in a comment. We'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I want to thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for joining us.
And we'll see you in the next video.